This video is supported by one of the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange platforms, Bybit.com. Sign up today and get up to $1,000 in bonuses and coupons. You can also join a $400,000 trading competition along with other contests where you can win Bitcoin prizes and so much more. Just go to bybit.jasonsherman.org to sign up. That's bybit.jasonsherman.org. In today's episode of Startup Journey, I have Dr. Ty Belknap, the CEO of Port Bell, with me today on the show. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Jason. I'm very happy to be here.
Appreciate it. But one of the most intriguing things I noticed when I was doing a little digging was that not only were you homeless as a teenager, but then you became a beach bum surfer. And out of that whole thing, you somehow landed into technology and started a business. I know you probably get the question all the time is how did that all happen? But what I'm more curious about is what was the catalyst that made you realize, well, wait a minute, I don't have to do this anymore. I can run this technology business. Like, what was that moment or the day when it happened?
The funny thing is, actually, I've never gotten that particular question before. So thank you. That's awesome. Hawaii, I was a beach bum in Hawaii, and Hawaii is very expensive to live. And so I had quit a job there, and I was trying to figure out what to do. And I realized that I had about 3 months worth of income for Hawaii terms to figure out what I wanted to do or what I wanted to do next. And I decided, well, I'm going to move back to the mainland. And that 3 months worth of income lasted me about a year on the mainland. And that's what the price differences are. But after that year, I had no job. I've been bumming around the Pacific Northwest for about a year, just goofing off. And I decided to get a job, and literally the only job I could find was selling computers. And the selling part I never really liked, but I immediately just loved doing the computer stuff. And I became a total techie nerd within just months of starting the job. And
your catalyst sounds a lot like mine because I started out building computers for people. They wanted custom computers. So is that kind of what you were doing? You were building custom PCs, or you were just selling like Dell computers?
I don't think Dell was even around back then. I'm old, so this was a long time ago. Okay. No, what I was doing is I'd sell computers, but they were so new that people didn't know how to run them. Generally, you didn't have enough memory in them to do anything. And so once I sold them, people would come back and they'd hire me after work hours to teach them how to do it, to fix and repair and upgrade their computers.
So we're talking about like the Commodore 64s and the VIC 20 type of stuff, or like the original IBM computers.
Not quite that old. It was the 386s. Microsoft Windows 3.1 had just come out. So back around 1991, around there.
Yeah. So DOS was king at that point.
Yeah, definitely.
Floppy disks. That's cool. I mean, it's cool that you actually found that niche. I mean, I did the same thing. I was teaching people how to run computers. I was teaching people how to do because they didn't know how to do anything, right? So it was a good niche to be in. Now, during that time, you must have had some sort of challenge transitioning from that technology business to a web development business, which is what you run now, and an SEO business. So the transition between, and I did the same thing, by the way. So I went from building computers and teaching people how to run computers to building websites for businesses to then, scaling that into a web development shop, right? Mobile app development shop. So for you, what were your challenges when you were doing that? There must have been some obstacles that you had to face in order to go from the hardware to then the software.
Yeah, there were some challenges. One of the big things we were doing is, and back then there really wasn't much of a difference between hardware and software. If you did one, you did them both. It wasn't really separated back then. So I was learning one of the most difficult programs to learn called C++ back then. And it was very difficult.
I got a book like this big about it.
Yeah. And you'd work on it for a week before you could hit a button to find out if what you did worked or didn't work. And so there was very little to know. I mean, you type one character wrong and the whole program's gone. Then you have to debug everything. Well, I actually worked at Microsoft right around 1995. And that was when I designed my first website. I was on the help desk when 95 came out. And so that was a huge thing.
Oh, my God.
And it was awesome, though. We've learned so much so quick. But everything that we learned to troubleshoot Windows 95 didn't work in the real world. We had to redo everything. So as a part of that, I actually designed a website called Troubleshooting Windows 95 that I put out there. And that's how I actually got into web design, was doing that one website. And it was
That's
really
so
exciting
cool.
because, I love doing it. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, I was something similar. I built a website for a class in college on
Mhm.
for my business, and once I did that, I was like, "Oh my god, I can actually sell stuff for my business on this
Mhm.
page for people." I was immediately hooked. So I totally get it.
Yeah.
Now, let's say you had a time machine, right? And you could
Mhm.
go back to when you made a big mistake. Like everybody's got a big mistake in their life, right? If you could go back in time, business related, right? Business related,
Okay.
and you could fix something so that something bad doesn't happen. What would that moment be, and how would you have avoided it?
That's a tough question. I actually have two or three failed businesses under my belt before I started doing my web design business. And I made some very big mistakes, but I learned so much from them that if I could go back, I'd almost be nervous not to make them, because then I might make them when it was even more important to do. But I would say the one big mistake I made in my failed businesses was not taking them seriously enough, was not dedicating the time to them and the training. And that was one thing that working on computers taught me, was you got to train a lot. No matter what you're doing, it doesn't matter the kind of business you have. You really need to learn and keep learning, even if you're a hairdresser, because even hairstyles change.
I love that. That's one of the biggest points in my book, is to
Mhm.
become an expert at what you're doing, learn the industry inside and
Mhm.
out, understand what the market wants and needs from what you're doing, and really researching and learning everything about it. So I totally get that. And that's one of the things that mentors provide, right? So I'm sure
Yeah.
you've had at least one or two mentors as they've given you knowledge or wisdom over the years. What was one piece of crucial advice that you were given throughout your career from someone that really made a difference?
The biggest thing that made a difference, I think, and it was when I first started my own technology business, was I was getting into these multi-level marketing things, because my business wasn't making a lot of money at first. So I started doing other things to try to make money. And a friend of mine said, it's just really simple. He said, if you're into something, get into it. If not, get out. And I'm sure he probably got that quote from someone else. But really what it means is go in 100%. No matter what you're doing, just do it with everything you've got. If it then fails, you can at least say you gave it everything.
Floor the gas, right? Floor the
Yeah.
gas. No brakes. Rip the brakes out.
Exactly. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can totally imagine. I mean, actually, I can't really imagine, to be honest with you, being homeless and trying to survive in such a sometimes cruel world and harsh environments and people who look
Mhm.
down on you. I mean, this has to be a motivating factor for you, I'm thinking, to succeed in a way that you have running businesses. And whether you failed or
Mhm.
not, you learned a lot along the way. So is that really your deep down drive behind not failing? And a lot of times I ask entrepreneurs, was there a day when you wanted to throw in the towel and give up? And I'm going to guess here that you already did. You already made it out of the hole. So
Yeah.
what's that like in your head?
Being homeless is the bottom. It really is. Being homeless is extremely difficult. Being homeless as a teenager is almost impossible, because even the help services that you have as an adult, you don't have as a teenager. You can't spend the night in a homeless shelter if you're under 18, unless you have a family member with you. And so, and then and I'm talking 30 years ago when I was homeless, it was even more difficult back then. Yeah, there were more than one time that I wanted to give up. And I just got to say, it's because of God that I didn't. It's the only thing that I can attribute that part to. And crawling out of that, it really did teach me more than anything that the biggest mistake that I can make in business really isn't that bad. It's compared to what I've already been through. Maybe I lose a little bit of money. Oh well, it's worth trying. Either
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, and that's a good point that people need to understand, who are listening, entrepreneurs out there.
Mhm.
If you fail, or if you make a mistake, or if your business dies, who cares? You're
Yeah,
still healthy, you're still alive, you can do something else. And guess what? You just learned a whole bunch of
yeah,
lessons of
The only,
what not to do, right?
exactly. I was going to say the only way you can actually really fail is by quitting.
Yeah.
Everything else is a stepping stone to greatness.
And you must have transitioned over the years from working jobs. I mean, you mentioned you worked at Microsoft, which is a nice place to work. And well, we'll say, theoretically, for people who haven't worked there, it's a nice place to work. But I've heard stories of the tyrants. But we'll say that you worked at Microsoft, you had other jobs, I'm sure. How did you transition from that to running your business full time? Because there's a financial aspect that a lot of people are afraid to obviously quit their jobs and start a business, because where are they going to get paychecks from? How are they going to get their health insurance, and so on and so forth? So what was that transition like for you? And what's your advice for people that want to venture out into entrepreneurship financially?
That's an excellent question too, because it is difficult. And I know so many people these days that say, I don't even want to get a job. I just want to be an entrepreneur and do it all myself. And I tell them all the same thing: work for somebody else. You learn so much. You don't understand how difficult it is to get up at 7 or 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work, or to stay late because you have to get something done, even when you don't want to. It really teaches you commitment. To me, being an entrepreneur, I know so many entrepreneurs that don't wake up before noon. And you really can't be, to me, you can't be a successful entrepreneur without giving everything you've got. And so I say, get a job, do the entrepreneur thing on the side in the evenings, on the weekends. Is it going to take up a lot of your time? Yeah, but that's going to show your commitment as well. And then once you have the money coming in, then you can start transitioning from your regular job into your entrepreneur job.
It's a very common way to put it. A lot of people out there, myself included, you included, say to run the business on the side while you have income. And then as soon as the business starts to generate revenue to the point where you think, okay, I'm earning enough that I can quit my job, then you quit your job. So too many people quit and then go do it and then fail, and then they're broke, and then they're crying. But we can only give our advice, and people can take it for what it is.
Exactly.
Now, we both run these web mobile development shops. You have some SEO in yours as well, where we have employees around the world that we manage, and it's got its ups and it's got its downs. It's got perks and advantages, disadvantages as well. Give me some of your perks and advantages of not only running your own business, but also having kind of like a low overhead, but also managing people. What's it like for you?
I gotta say, COVID has been awesome for us. Not in the way of being a terrible virus going around, but just so many people have come to us, because I've actually run a remote business since 2002. And back in 2002, people were always saying, what do you mean you don't have an office? What do you mean you don't have someplace where I can come in and see you? And nowadays they're saying, how do I do that? How do I create a remote workplace? And so I'm very glad to help people, especially local restaurants, are one of the ones that we're helping a lot, because it's hit them so hard. But I can help them figure out how to do stuff remotely, how to do stuff online, how to get the orders in when they don't have the big bucks of the big restaurant chains, things like that. I love having a remote workforce, because it gives the people a chance to be entrepreneurs themselves. Even though they're working for me, they're in charge of their time. And so they get that whole entrepreneurship, and it gives them the advantage. I've even helped one of my employees start their own business after working with me, simply because they did such a great job. But they were a true entrepreneur. And so it was exciting for me to see them take that step also.
That's a great point, is the fact that the people you've worked with have kind of branched out on their own. And I've done similar things, whether it was technology or film or writing. And I've helped these people working on projects with me. I've taught them a lot of what I know, and then helped them start their own business. That's a great point, man. And I think that that goes to your earlier point about people having to work for others. And I think that entrepreneurs should definitely not just work for others, but collaborate with other companies. So like, say you're into film and videography, work with a production company. You don't have to go get them coffee and be a production assistant, but try to physically work with them. Try to, work with the cameras and learn from them. When it comes to technology, learn from what it is you're building for your customers, so that's a great point. And of course, I want to know a little bit about how people can do better SEO, because that's a big topic, right? And I know I do a lot of SEO, whether it's blog posts and press releases and using keywords and trending topics and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But
Oh,
like,
yeah.
what are like the top 3 things you recommend to entrepreneurs if they want to improve the SEO on their website or their mobile app or their product?
Well, if you don't mind me doing a blatant plug, the 3rd edition of my book, Timeless SEO Secrets, just came out last month. And so it's hit the shelves. It's on Kindle. You can do a paperback version, or it's even on Audible now. Just came out on Audible. And it really is about SEO secrets that you can do yourselves. If some of your audience may not be familiar with it, Google just came out with 2 huge updates, and they were ground changers. And the really big thing that Google decided that they wanted to do was they wanted to make sure that people got relevant results when they did searches. It doesn't sound groundbreaking, does it?
Well, I mean, I know they use robots and they scrape a lot, and they're trying to get the most dynamic content available. They don't like a lot of static stuff, so that's why, at least I always tell people, the more content you put out on a regular basis, the more likely your content will be found versus the static websites out there.
And that's actually one of the big changes they made, because I mean, the whole point of Google, Yahoo, Bing, Yandex, whatever search engine you want, is they want to make sure when you go onto their search engine and you type refrigerator repair, that you don't get a whole bunch of websites about digital cameras or something else. They want it to be as relevant as possible. So one of the things they've actually taken out is the constant updates. What's more important now is quality of content. And not that you can only post once a year. You still want to do it semi-consistently. But the quality of the content is even more important now than it ever has been. But the big thing is the quality of the content's been important since I did my first website in 1995. And that, to me, that is the number one thing that you can do is provide quality content throughout your whole website, throughout your blog posts, the whole 9 yards, like I'm sure that you know about as well.
Yeah, that's a big one. So are there any others that you recommend?
Keywords is another one. Figuring out the right keywords.
So let me ask you. So
Yeah.
keywords. Let me ask you. So instead of just explaining the keywords, I'm sure people understand it because there's hashtags on Twitter and Instagram and whatnot. How
Right.
do you pick the right keywords?
Well, one great way to pick the right keywords, and this is one great thing about the internet, especially if you're new in business and you're not sure what to do, find out what your competition is doing and see what keywords they're using.
So steal your competitor's information. Great answer, everyone. Steal it.
No, it's not stealing if
I'm kidding.
enough, but
hey, imitation is the best form of flattery, right?
Exactly, yeah, to a point. Yeah, find out what your competition is using for their keywords and see. But here's the big thing: make sure that the keywords they're using aren't terrible keywords. Right. So you got to kind of make sure that the keywords they're using are good enough for you to use as well.
That's fantastic. So I want to hear your inspirational kind of wisdom for entrepreneurs out there who are listening and they got some valuable information from your story. But now, what would you tell entrepreneurs who are listening, how to be, how to work, how to live, what kind of things should they do if they want to be an entrepreneur?
Number one, I would say, would be separate your work and your home. A lot of entrepreneurs work from home, and so maybe you just have a computer on your desk or a little desk in the corner. Find a way to separate it. Put walls around it. Put a partition around it. Say, this is my workspace. And at the end of the day, leave your workspace, go home. Don't work anymore. But because what that does is, number one, it makes it a lot less easy to get on the TV and do a binge watch some streaming app or something like that. It really helps you to just sit down and say, okay, I'm working now. To me, that's the number one thing. And my office is a small building behind my house. I'm lucky enough to have that. And it helps me out a lot because I know when I'm in my office, I'm working. When I leave the office, I'm not working anymore. So that's the number one thing to me.
Do you have any other number 2s or 3s?
Yeah, kind of like I said, the only way to really fail is when you actually quit. Don't take failure don't take a setback as a failure. And don't think in your mind, just because you failed at something, that you are a failure. Because you're never a failure as long as you keep trying. I don't know the last time that a successful company had, a successful company that's always doing the same thing had major breakthroughs because they're comfortable in what they're doing. Unless you have a setback and it makes you think and makes you go into a different way, get you out of that comfort zone, then you have your breakthroughs much more than when things are going well.
And of course, we all know Thomas Edison didn't fail 10,000 times. He figured out 10,000 times that the light bulb wouldn't work.
Exactly.
And the one time it did work, that's how he put it. So, don't fail, just learn 10,000 times how to do something until you get it right. Right. And that's really the lesson that people have to take home you're not failing, you're learning. There's a big difference between those two words.
Yeah, exactly.
And, one more time, where can people get your book?
The book is Timeless SEO Secrets. It's available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all of the EPUBs, including Apple and Google, and it's also on Audible if you want to listen to it.
Awesome. And is there a website where people can learn more about you?
Yeah, portbell.com. And there's links to my books and magazine articles and about the company as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming, Ty. You were a pleasure to talk to. I loved hearing your inspirational story, man.
Thank you, Jason. It was great to learn more about you as well.
Awesome. And we'll see everybody in next week's episode.